Okay, and I just want to make sure they can hear us because I know one person had their hand raised and we're getting that message. It looks like no, that message has changed, so I think maybe that's addressed the issue.
Perhaps we have. Yeah, I'm not seeing that message anymore.
I'm not seeing that message anymore either, so thank you for fixing that.
Thank you, Commissioner. As I was saying, the first item on our regular meeting agenda this evening is to consider a request by EDKA Land Company LLC to annex and zone 6.73 plus or minus acres from County RSFR residential single family rural to a city R5 residential 5 dwelling units per acre zone district in anticipation of future residential subdivision development. Is the applicant here for this item this evening? Good to see you. Are you ready to proceed? All right. Staff, are you ready to proceed?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
I apologize. This is the last time, I promise.
Turn your mic off.
But when I was looking at this, I was like, what is my family up to? And so I dug into this item. This is not my Reese's. I wanted to make sure that that was put on the record. This is the Reese annexation. It's spelled the same way. These are not my people, and I am not related to this project. I'm sure they're lovely people, but they're not mine. So I just wanted to let the public know that I have no affiliation with this project, and not going to have any sort of conflict of interest because I don't know them. So just wanted to put that on the record. I promise not to interrupt again.
Thank you. No, that's a worthy interruption. Thank you for clarifying that for all of us. Staff, are you ready to proceed?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Before we do, was there required public notice on this item?
There was adequate or appropriate public notification.
You anticipated my next question, which was that notice provided? Is the answer yes?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. In that case, we can proceed. Would you please introduce the exhibits for our record this evening?
Yes, I will. Exhibit number 1 is the staff report dated August 24th, 2021. Exhibit 2 is the site maps and photos. Exhibit 3 is neighborhood meeting notes that occurred. Exhibit number 4 is the Reese annexation map. Exhibit number 5 is the zone of annexation ordinance as proposed. The exhibit number 6 is the staff PowerPoint presentation dated today, August 24, 2021. Do want to note that there was one public comment received on gjspeaks.org, so hopefully you had a chance to see that. It relates to access to this property through the only access point it has, which is Round Table Road.
Thank you, Mr. Thornton. Are there any additional exhibits to be added to the record that were not included with the staff report?
None that I'm aware of.
In that case, please proceed with your presentation.
Thank you very much. Dave Thornton, Principal Planner with the City of Grand Junction Community Development Department. As mentioned, this is the Reese annexation, zone of annexation. The annexation request is by EDKA Land Company LLC. It will be considered by City Council on October 6th. The annexation is considered only by City Council. Tonight, we've brought to you the zone of annexation and requesting a recommendation to City Council in regards to what the appropriate zone district should be for the annexation. The request is for R5, which is from the current county zoning of rural, residential single family rural. And the R5 is a density residential zoning with densities of 3 to 5.5 dwelling units per acre. On your screen, you'll see the site location map, location of the actual annex of the site of the project site. Here's the Round Table Road that I had mentioned earlier in my testimony here in regards to the access to the site. So it sits here just along the southern boundary is the Price Ditch, and the access to the site is through Round Table Road. Looking now at the air photo of the site, you can see that it's an area that's really urban infill. So you have already existing subdivisions, many of them in the salmon color that's in the city limits, that's bordering to the south and to the west there. There's some pockets of urbanization that occurred in unincorporated Mesa County. So clearly it's really an urban infill site with also some county subdivisions to the east. This slide shows the comprehensive plan land use map. The subject property has a designation of residential low. The requested zone district R5 is in conformance with that land use designation for the area. Looking at this slide shows the current zoning in the area, both city and county. The applicant again is requesting an R5. You can see there's R4 as well as some PUD densities of around 4 to 5 dwelling units per acre in the area. The neighborhood meeting regarding the proposed annexation, zoning and subdivision was held in accordance with the Zoning and Development Code on April 29, 2021. The applicant's representative, and city staff, along with 7 citizens, were in attendance. Questions concerned voiced by the neighbors included how will the future subdivision be accessed? The city also received no emails, calls, or letters concerning the proposed residential zoning. Again, the only comment we received was on GJ Speaks in regards to the access. Looking at this slide, you can see here's the access point from Round Table Road. As your the pictures being taken from Round Table Road looking north into the site. The Colorado State Statutes Municipal Annexation Act requires findings of eligibility for annexation. I only put this on the screen for you to know that this is something that City Council will consider when they consider the annexation in October. And again, tonight we're just asking you to review the zoning that would be the appropriate zone for this parcel of land. As with any rezone or zone of annexation, it is necessary to review the criteria and provide an analysis as to whether the proposed zoning conforms to the Zoning and Development Code requirements. Regarding the zone of annexation, the criteria for review is set forth in section 2102.140A of the Zoning and Development Code and includes that the city may rezone property if the proposed changes are consistent with the vision, goals, and policies of the comprehensive plan, and they must meet one or more of the rezone criteria as identified on this slide. City staff has found that 4 of the 5 rezone criteria have been met, including criterion 1, subsequent events have invalidated the original premises and findings. The existing county zoning of RSFR does not implement the land use designation of the residential low. And criterion 3, the public and community facilities are adequate to serve the type and scope of the residential land uses expected in the R5 zone district. Criterion 4, there's an inadequate supply of land zone R5 in this part of the community. And criterion 5, the area will derive benefit by providing additional land for housing, help fill in the patchwork of city limits, and help achieve some of the goals of the comprehensive plan. In addition, the requested annexation and zoning is in accordance with the Presidio Agreement, which states that all new development shall be annexed into the city. The proposed zoning of R5 meets the intent of achieving the desired density for the property and is in conformance with the comprehensive plan designation. Additional discussion regarding the individual review criteria for the zone of annexation can be found and is identified within the staff report for your reference. Regarding consistency with the comprehensive plan, which is another thing that must be met, the rezone criteria provides that the city must also find the request is consistent with the vision, goals, and policies of the comprehensive plan. And staff has found the request to be consistent with the following. Chapter 2, Plan Principle 3, Responsible and Managed Growth. The goal under that section the goal is to support fiscally responsible growth and annexation policies that promote a compact pattern of growth and encourage the efficient use of land. Another goal in that section is encourages infill and redevelopment to leverage existing infrastructure. Also, Plan Principle 5 under Chapter 2 of the Comprehensive Plan, strong neighborhoods and housing choices. The goal there is to promote more opportunities for housing choices that meets the needs of people of all ages, abilities, and incomes. Additional ways this request is consistent with the 2021 Grand Junction Comprehensive Plan can be found in the written staff report. So with that, our findings of fact from a professional perspective, in accordance with section 2102-140A of the Zoning and Development Code, the application meets one or more of the rezone criteria. And in accordance with section 2102-160F of the Zoning and Development Code, the application is consistent with the adopted 2021 Grand Junction Comprehensive Plan. That includes my presentation. I'm available for any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Thornton. Do we have questions for staff at this time?
Mr. Chairman, if I might just very briefly for the record,
Certainly.
Mr. Thornton, on the analysis slide that you had, there was a reference to an R8. I presume that's a typo?
Oh, thank you. Yeah, that's a typo. It's an R5.
Mr. Chairman, with that correction for the record, would submit the evidence.
Thank you. Do we now have any questions for staff? No? All right. Would the applicant like to give us an presentation this evening? Looks like they would.
Does it matter which one we stand at?
I don't know. I think
Okay.
that's the one you're intended to be at, the one you're at right now.
My name is Mark Austin with Austin Civil Group here in Grand Junction, 123 North 7th Street, Suite 300. Staff has done a great job of kind of outlining our zoning request, and I'm here to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you, Mr. Austin. Do we have any questions for the applicant?
Thank you.
See none of those either. So at this time, I'll open the public hearing to public comment. Please direct questions to the Planning Commission, not to the applicant or staff. If testimony is duplicative or repetitious of what has already been presented, please note in your comments agreement or disagreement with preceding testimony. Public comment is limited to 3 minutes per person. Please note that the Planning Commission may not directly respond to questions that you pose during your testimony, but we have heard your questions and may choose after public comment to ask the applicant or staff to address any specific questions. Do we have anyone interested in giving public comment this evening on this item? Looks like we don't have anyone in the room. Do we have anyone online interested in providing public commentary this evening? All right. Well, hearing no public comment, we will close the public comment portion of this hearing. I assume since we heard no public comment that the applicant doesn't wish to make any rebuttal or response to the public comment we did not hear. Thank you. So turning back to us, are there any questions for the applicant or staff that we thought of?
I may have a question, and more so to address the one question that was put on GJ Speaks regarding the only access being down through Round Table Road. Dave, are there any, when it comes to annexation and making sure that this is an appropriate annexation, crossing the canal is a matter of engineering, of course, and it appears that to the east there is already sort of a connection road in play. And to alleviate some of the concern about all of this traffic coming down through Round Table Road forevermore, is it true that there would be requirements through site planning as we move forward to try to connect over to that road? And I guess that kind of ties on to trying to give the the individual who commented some comfort that not only is there some policy that might guide that way, but also that there's probably some limitation on having 6 point some odd acres at R5. The number of homes in there would start to exceed that number that you could have on a single access as well, which would compel the developer to provide that access, or at least the potential for future access over that. Is that information to address that comment that was put in there? Is that all correct from a planning perspective?
Mr. Chairman, members of the Planning Commission, yeah, that for sure. Connectivity is an important part of the requirements of the Zoning and Development Code and other codes and regulations of the city. And so at the Stubb Street, I think you're referring to is right here in the PUD section.
Yeah.
On the screen there. And so ultimately that would connect to this site, as well as another connection that would eventually head north to F.5 Road to provide a lot better connectivity for not only this new project here, but also those folks that live down here to be able to get up to F.5 Road over to Thunder Mountain Elementary School, for example, as far as taking their kid to school, whatever it might be.
Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any other questions for staff or for the applicant? Commissioner?
Chairman Chesky, unless we want further discussion among as commissioners, I'm ready to propose a motion.
Well, that would be fine with me. Let me just close our public hearing real fast before we do that, though. That's all right. So at this time, we'll close the public hearing and turn back to the Planning Commission for any additional discussion, deliberation, and or a motion, perhaps.
I have some discussion. As I evaluate the criteria that we have before us against this request, I do agree that with the staff report, that this application is consistent with our zoning and development code and does implement a couple of key metrics of our comprehensive plan. So I just wanted to go on record to say that I do agree with the staff's report that that this should be approved.
Thank you, Commissioner. Do we have any additional discussion on this point? Thank you. In that case, we'll accept your motion, Commissioner.
Mr. Chairman, on the zone of annexation for the Reese annexation to R5 residential, 5 dwelling units per acre zone district, file number ANX 2021-365. I move that the Planning Commission forward a recommendation of approval to City Council with the findings of fact listed in the staff report.
Thank you, Commissioner. We have a motion. Do we have a second? We have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Hearing none, that matter will pass 7-0. Moving on then to our second item for public hearing this evening, to consider a request by Richard and Mary Ann Traver to annex and zone approximately 19.41 acres from County PUD Planned Unit Development and County RSFR Residential Single Family Rural 5-acre lot sizes to a City R8 Residential 8 dwelling units per acre zone for the Westland Meadows annexation, a property located at 2973 D1/2 Road west of 30 Road in Pear Park. Is the applicant here this evening? You're the applicant, sir? All right. Are you ready to proceed this evening? All right. Staff, are you ready to proceed this evening?
Yes, Chairman.
Thank you. Before we get started with that, was there required public notice for this item?
Yes, sir.
And was that notice given as required by the code?
Yes, sir.
Well, with that, we can proceed. Would you please introduce our exhibits for the record?
Yes. Exhibits should include the staff report dated August 24th, 2021, the site location and zoning maps, a annexation schedule and summary table, the neighborhood meeting notes, and a Westland Meadows annexation map, zone of annexation ordinance, and the staff PowerPoint presentation dated August 24th, 2021.
Thank you. Are there any additional exhibits to be added to the record that were not included with the staff report?
No, sir.
Thank you. With that, we can proceed.
Thank you. So my name is Felix Landry. I'm the planning supervisor with Community Development Department, and this is a request for zone of annexation for approximately 19.41 acres from County PUD, Planned Unit Development, and County RSFR to the City R8 zoning district for Westland Meadows annexation. This is just a consideration for the zoning change for the annexation. Let's see. Do I hit arrow keys? Yes. Okay. So as you can see here, this is a site location map. The properties already within the city limits are shown in the salmon color. The property is located at 2973 D1/2 Road, just west of 30 Road. It's in the Pear Park area of the city. It's identified on this slide with the dark blue outline. And the subject property is currently mostly undeveloped. There is a single-family residence located near the northern extremity of the property near D1/2 Road. This slide shows the aerial photo of the site. The applicant is requesting the annexation into the city limits in anticipation of future residential subdivision development that would be in conformance with the requested R8 zone district. The request for the annexation will be considered separately by City Council. This property is within an urban infill area, and the surrounding properties reside both within the city limits and in unincorporated Mesa County. The area is largely developed single-family detached homes, each on a platted lot or parcel. This slide shows the future land use plan from the comprehensive plan for Grand Junction. The subject property has a land use designation of residential medium, 5.5 to 12 dwelling units per acre. The requested zoning district of R8 is in conformance with the land use designation for the area. This slide illustrates the current zoning in the area. The applicant is requesting a zoning to R8, which is compatible with the adjacent city zoning already in place for the property located to the west, south, northwest, and northeast of the site. The applicant's property is currently in the county and retains a county zoning of PUD and RSFR. The surrounding undeveloped properties or agricultural lands in incorporated Mesa County are zoned RSFR. The developed urban density in the surrounding neighborhoods consists of lots ranging from 0.18 to 0.45 acres. A neighborhood meeting regarding the proposed annexation, zoning, and subdivision was held in accordance with the Zoning and Development Code on March 31st, 2021. The applicant, applicant's representative, and city staff, along with 2 citizens, were in attendance. Questions and discussion at the neighborhood meeting centered mainly on the proposed future subdivision of the property regarding phasing and access and whether the zoning might change during the process, and also how tall future homes might be when developed. This is an aerial photo of the site, and it shows the existing property looking north from the southern edge of the property from the irrigation canal towards D1/2 Road. The Municipal Annexation Act of 1956, codified in state statute, sets the procedural requirements for annexation, including notices, timelines, eligibility, and criteria and action. Specifically, in order to annex a property, the city shall find all the criterion of eligibility have been met, including these 7 standards. So these are things that City Council will consider once the case reaches them. So right now, we're just considering the request for zoning. As with any rezone or zone of annexations, it's necessary to review the criteria and provide an analysis as to whether the proposed zoning conforms to the Zoning and Development Code requirements. Regarding the zone of annexation, the criteria for review is set forth in section 21.02.140A of the Zoning and Development Code. It includes that the city may rezone property if the proposed changes are consistent with the vision, goals, and policies of the comprehensive plan, and they must meet one or more of the rezone criteria as identified in this slide. City staff has found that 3 of the 5 rezone criteria have been met, including criterions 3, 4, and 5. Criterion 3 states that the public and community facilities are adequate to serve the type and scope of the residential land uses expected in the R8 zone. Criterion 4 says that there is an inadequate supply of land zoned R8 in this part of the community. And criterion 5 says the community or area as defined by the presiding body will derive benefits from the proposed amendment. And in that case, the area will derive benefit from providing additional land for housing, help fill in the patchwork of the city limits, and help achieve some of the goals of the comprehensive plan. In addition, the requested annexation zoning is in accordance with the Prosigo Agreement, which states that all new development shall be annexed to the city limits. The proposed zoning of R8 meets the intent of achieving the desired density for the property and is in conformance with the comprehensive plan designation for the property of residential medium, 5.5 to 12 dwelling units per acre. Additional criteria or additional discussion regarding the individual review criteria for the zone of annexation can be found and is identified within the city staff report for your reference. Regarding consistency with the comprehensive plan, the rezone criteria provides that the city must also find the request is consistent with the vision, goals, and policies of the comprehensive plan. Staff has found the request to be consistent with the following goals of the comprehensive plan. In Chapter 2, Plan Principle 3, Responsible and Managed Growth, the goal is to support fiscally responsible growth and annexation policies that promote a compact pattern of growth and encourage the efficient use of land. And the second goal is to encourage infill and redevelopment to leverage existing infrastructure. Also in Chapter 2, Plan Principle 5, Strong Neighborhoods and Housing Choices. This proposal meets the goal to promote more opportunities for housing choices that meets the needs of people of all ages, abilities, and incomes. So in accordance with section 21.02.140A of the Zoning and Development Code, the application meets one or more of the rezone criteria. And in accordance with section 21.02.160F of the Zoning and Development Code, the application is consistent with the adopted 2021 Grand Junction Comprehensive Plan. So after reviewing the Westland Meadows Zone of Annexation request, the following effects have been made. That concludes my presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Landry. Do we have any questions for the for staff at this time? Commissioner?
Good presentation, Mr. Landry. I just had a couple clarifications on my reading. I want to make sure I'm clear. I thought you said that the staff found 3 out of 5 criteria met on the zoning criteria. Is
Yes,
that
sir.
correct? And which ones are those? Are those, I had 1, 3, 4. Is that correct?
Oh, no, sir. That should be 3, 4, and 5.
3, 4, and 5.
Yes, sir.
So in the staff report, I'm reading this on criteria 1 under analysis, it says, therefore staff has found the criteria has been met.
Let's see.
I just want to get it clear for the record.
Yes. So for the record, that would be a crucial typo of leaving out the not. It has not been met.
Which one's
For
not?
criteria 1, sir. It should be just criteria
so-
3, 4, and 5 that have been met.
Does that need to be corrected in the staff report for the record?
Yes, sir, it does.
Thank you.
I have a question on being good partners with the county. I'm not sure if I've encountered a scenario as this before. It appears that the underlying property is part of a PUD, and it begs the question of if that PUD or PD is associated with the parcel that's not included with this application, but is the same property owner's property to the north there that actually attaches to Deanna Half Road. And if we annex a portion of a PD that's in the county, do we disrupt any of the PD requirements and kind of the special nature of a PD? And I guess furthermore with that, is that really a factor considering it's in the comprehensive plan, or I'm sorry, within the urban growth boundary, which would trigger annexation of that northern parcel if it was to be developed anyway? It's kind of a lot there. Is it clear what I'm asking on are we?
I think so. So in the case that the remaining portion of the parcel that has the existing PUD zoning, if it were developed and be annexed, it would most likely be annexed to the same zoning that we're recommending for this property in the R8. So in that case, the PUD would be completely gone by the time the future development occurred.
So if it's going to be developed, it would essentially trigger annexation, therefore nullifying this concern, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, great. Just want to make sure we're being good neighbors with our county and not disrupting a PD plan that is typically unique. Thanks.
Do we have any other questions for staff at this time? I have one follow-up on that PUD issue. Do you happen to know, Mr. Landry, what the status of the PD approvals are in the county at this point with respect to that specialized zoning?
No, sir, I do not.
Thank you. Would our applicant like to give a presentation this evening?
Name is Richard Traver. I don't have anything to present, but I'm available should there be any questions on this PUD issue, if it's of any help. There was a subdivision proposed for this property back in the early 1980s. It was called Electric Mountain Subdivision. And when I bought the property, that owner gave me all of his plans for it, but this is a long time ago, 40 years ago, maybe. It's long since defunct.
That's helpful. Thanks.
Yeah,
It's
that is
likely
helpful.
expired anyway, making the entire issue mute. So,
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you, sir. Do we have any questions for the applicant? I hear none. Well, thank you, sir. We appreciate you being here this evening. At this time then, I will open the matter for public hearing. Please direct questions to the commission, not to the applicant or staff. If testimony is duplicative or repetitious of what has already been presented, please note in your comments agreement or disagreement with preceding testimony. Public comment is limited to 3 minutes per person. That does go quickly. Please note the Planning Commission may not directly respond to questions that you may pose, but we have heard your questions and may choose after public comment to ask the applicant or staff to address any specific questions. Is there anyone wishing to give public comment this evening on this item? I don't see anyone jumping up from the audience here. Do we have anyone online? I see shaking heads. No, we have no public comment on this item either. Well, in that case, we will close the public comment portion of this hearing. I'm assuming our applicant, again, doesn't need to provide any rebuttal or response to that. Is that right, sir? Nothing further to say. Thank you. In that case, do we have any questions for the applicant or staff that we thought of in the intervening 30 seconds? All right. No, Commissioner.
Nope, I was going to
Just-
offer a motion if you're ready
Just
for it.
moving. Well, I'll go ahead and close our public comment proceedings first, if you don't mind. So at this time, we'll close the public hearing and turn to the Planning Commission for additional discussion, deliberation, and/or a motion. Perhaps we can start with discussion. Is there anyone who would like to discuss this matter?
Just real briefly, Chairman
Commissioner.
Miskowski. What we're looking at now, since is the zoning request, the zone, appropriate zone that will go to then city council for approval of annexation.
Yes, I believe that's correct. Yeah.
With that, I would offer a motion, Mr. Chairman, on the zone of annexation for the Westland Meadows annexation to R8, residential 8 dwelling units to the acre, zone district, file number ANX 2021-343. I move that the Planning Commission forward a recommendation of approval to City Council with the findings of facts listed in the staff report.
Thank you, Commissioner. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed, say nay. Hearing none, that matter will also pass 7-0. Moving on then to our third and final item for public hearing this evening, we will consider a request by Faith Heights to rezone one parcel totaling approximately 13.92 acres from R8 Residential 8 to MU Mixed Use located at 628 1/4 Road. Is the applicant here this evening? Good evening. Are you ready to proceed? Staff, are you ready to proceed?
Very soon.
So close.
Alrighty, I think we're ready.
Fabulous. Before we begin, was there required public notice on this item?
Yes, sir.
And was that notice provided in compliance with the code?
Yes, sir.
Well, with that, we can proceed. Would you please introduce our exhibits for the record?
Yes. So your exhibit should include a staff report dated August 10th, 2021, development application packet dated May 10th, 2021, neighborhood meeting documentation, and maps and exhibits. We also provided a hard copy of 2 comments that came in by email over the last 2 days. They should be in your materials provided. One of them is a duplicate of a comment that showed up on GJ Speaks, but the longer email did come in, I think just yesterday.
Thank you, Mr. Landry. Have the commissioners all had an opportunity to review those 2 additional exhibits? Thank you. All right, Mr. Landry, are there any other exhibits to be added to our record this evening?
No, sir.
Thank you. Well, with that, please proceed with your presentation.
Thank you. My name is Felix Landry. I'm the planning supervisor with the City of Grand Junction. The item I'm presenting today is the consideration of a request by Kim Kirk, acting on behalf of the property owner, Faith Heights Church, to rezone one parcel totaling approximately 13.92 acres from R8, which is residential 8 dwelling units per acre, to MU, mixed use. The property is located at 600 28 1/4 Road. This graphic describes the existing conditions and vicinity map of the subject property, which is surrounded by the orange outline in the middle of the graphic. To the north resides an Alzheimer's special care facility. Northeast are large tracts of undeveloped property, and to the northwest reside single-family neighborhoods. Across 28 1/4 Road to the west resides a medical office complex, an apartment complex, and a single-family neighborhood. On the south side of Patterson Road resides the Grand Junction Fire Station No. 2, Manti Heights Rehabilitation and Care Center, the Retreat at Harbor Cove, and a variety of residential neighborhoods. As shown in this map on the slide, the subject property is currently zoned R8, which refers to residential 8 dwelling units per acre. The surrounding zoning consists primarily of PUD, or Plan Unit Development zoning. There's also CSR, which is Community Service and Recreation, and MX-OC, which is Mixed Use Opportunity Corridors. Further from the subject property, the zoning consists primarily of R8, R5, and R4 residential zone districts. The residential districts further from the site have developed or are developing consistent with the guidelines described in the zoning ordinance. The CSR zoned property remains largely undeveloped except for Fire Station No. 2 on the south side of Patterson. The city has plans to develop Matchett Park on a large parcel of CSR to the east of the property. The MX-OC zoning to the west is developed with a church, and the MX-OC zone property to the east currently has a small business on it. The current development on the subject property consists of a 32,000 square foot office style structure from which Faith Heights Church currently operates. The potential for this structure and the rest of the site is somewhat limited with the current R8 zoning. The proposed MU mixed use zoning would allow for a range of uses more appropriate for the existing structure, the location of the property, and the land use plan. If the rezone application is approved and a development is subsequently proposed, it would be required to go through the formal review process, likely in the form of a major site plan review. This slide reflects the future land use map from the comprehensive plan, which identifies the property both for mixed use and for residential high land uses. The zoning districts that implement the residential high land use designation include R16 and R24, which are high density residential districts, community service and recreation, residential office, neighborhood business, mixed use residential, mixed use general, and mixed use shopfront. For the mixed use portion of the site, the zoning districts that implements the mixed use land use designation include the same zoning districts as the residential high, but also include business park, downtown business, and mixed use opportunity corridor. As such, the proposed zoning district of mixed use is supported by the comprehensive plan and the future land use map. Pursuant to section 21.02.140 of the Grand Junction Municipal Code, in order to maintain internal consistency between this code and the zoning maps, zoning map amendments must only occur if at least one of the 5 criteria listed below is met. Staff analysis of the criteria is found below in the staff report and in the presentation online for each criteria. Staff found that of the 5, criterion 1, criterion 3, criterion 4, and criterion 5 were all met. Specifically in criterion 5, the community or areas defined by the presiding body will derive benefits from the proposed amendment. Staff found that the current R8 zone district would not allow for many of the mixed-use development patterns that the 2021 Grand Junction Comprehensive Plan calls for. Furthermore, the mixed-use zoning would complement the surrounding development as well as the future development of Matchett Park to the northeast. As such, staff finds that that criterion has been met. In addition to the criteria previously mentioned, the city must also find the request is consistent with the vision, goals, and policies of the comprehensive plan. Staff has found the request to support the following. So plan principle 3.6.b, mix of uses, to support the creation of a mix of uses as in neighborhood centers, which this site is in a neighborhood center, and along permanent corridors, which this site also is along Patterson Road, that reflect the needs of adjoining residents and the characteristics of individual neighborhoods, including but not limited to retail, office, entertainment, schools, libraries, parks, recreation amenities, transit facilities, and other amenities. Additional plan principles that were met were plan principle 3.6.c, walkable centers, plan principle 5.1.c, housing types. And the staff report and the presentation online go into further detail of each of those, but I can answer questions about them if you have them. So after reviewing the Faith Heights rezone, city file number RZN-2021-427, the following findings of fact have been made. The requested zone is consistent with the goals and policies of the comprehensive plan. And number 2, in accordance with section 21.02.140 of the Grand Junction Zoning and Development Code, 1 or more of the criteria have also been met. So in conclusion, staff would recommend approval for the request. This concludes my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Landry. Do we have questions for staff? Yes, Commissioner.
Mr. Landry, on the comprehensive plan land use map, it only shows the portion of this property that fronts Patterson Road as mixed use, and the northern portion of the property is, I think, R8. Not having it right in front of me at the moment, but was there any consideration given to splitting the zoning on this parcel to be consistent with that comprehensive land use map rather than just zoning the entire parcel with one zone?
So just for clarity, currently the entire property is zoned R8.
Correct.
And the land use plan for the portion along Patterson, the southern part, is mixed use, but the portion to the north is residential high.
Okay, yeah.
And so the mixed use is an allowed zoning district or a recommended zoning district in both. The residential high portion, the lowest zoning district that's recommended is the residential 16. So R8 isn't actually listed as a recommended zoning district in either one of the land use designations.
So my question was there consideration given to splitting the zoning of this property rather than to have the mixed use portion only exist along the frontage of Patterson with the residential high designation on the northern part of the property.
Based on the neighborhood meeting, the two zoning designations that were discussed were, I think it was B1 and MU. The issue that came up with B1 was that there was a maximum building size for the type of building that's currently on the property. There was a maximum square footage of 30,000 square feet. And so the current building is already 32,000 square feet. And so in light of the B1 MU conversation, they decided to stick with just MU for the whole lot. The splitting it into a MU and a residential zoning district wasn't part of the discussions that I was involved in.
Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any other questions for staff?
Yes, I just, carrying on that thread, can you just clarify whether that existing building is in the southern portion that fronts Patterson that Commissioner Reese was referring to, or is that more in the northern half?
It's within the designation of the residential high. It's not in the mixed use designation.
Okay, so that would mean if that was strictly residential in that area, that building would need to be torn down. Is that correct?
It wouldn't need to.
We have a lot of non-complying structures around the city of Grand Junction, so I wouldn't expect that the city would recommend raising that property.
But one thing that's come up in other jurisdictions, such as the county, along Patterson, there's a church that's in a residential area, and it's to change it from anything from a church, it doesn't fit in that zone. It's not an allowed use in that zone. So it forces a rezone down the road if that's to become anything other than a church. The square footage would make it an existing nonconformity, but the use would never be allowed to change without going through some level of process. So it's probably something that could have been cleaner on the comprehensive plan in consideration of that specific use and what the intentions are. So the questions in this discussion, I think, is healthy. But we might be careful to give it too much weight on any emphasis towards splitting zoning would be my thoughts.
Thank you. Do we have other questions for staff at this time?
I have a question just for clarity, Mr. Landry. In mixed use, what is the maximum residential that you can put in there?
24 dwelling units per acre.
So it's similar, consistent with residential high?
Yes, ma'am.
Thanks.
Thank you. Any other questions for staff? I think we covered all of mine as well, so that's great. Would the applicant like to give us a presentation this evening?
Hi, good evening, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, staff. Thank you for your time tonight. My name is Kim Kirk. I'm the owner of Kirk Land Consulting and Development in Grand Junction. I'm here as the applicant's representative tonight for the rezone request on the Faith Heights Church property. It's at 628 and a quarter road. Mr. Landry did a great job of giving you all the information. As he said, he was a little bit new onto the project. We had an additional planner in the early on. So in reference to the discussion about the mixed use, we did go through a lot of iterations of, what's going to fit with the building, what's going to fit with the neighborhood, what's appropriate, and what's kind of all encompassing. And we did come up with that mixed use, as a wise choice for that property. But as he said, it's 13.92 acres that we're requesting to rezone from R8 to mixed use. And Felix has really given you a lot of information already, but what I'd like to add to it is the mixed use purpose is to provide for a mix of light manufacturing and office park employment centers, retail, service, and multifamily residential uses with appropriate screening, buffering, and open space, and enhancement of natural features and other amenities such as trails, shared drainage facilities, and common landscape and streetscape character. So a lot of thought was put into that as well with that mixed use choice, because there are some really nice amenities that could make that a really a nice campus feeling, lighter business. Of course, it's not going to be a big manufacturing outfit or something really highly industrial. So again, with that, the request is to rezone from R8 to mixed use on this property. And I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you, Ms. Kirk. Do we have any questions for the applicant at this point? I don't see any. Thank you. Well, at this time then, we will open the matter for public comment. Please direct your questions to the commission, not to the applicant or staff. If testimony is duplicative or repetitious of the testimony that has already been given, please note in your comments agreement or disagreement with the preceding testimony. Public comment is limited to 3 minutes per person. That does go quickly. Please note that the Planning Commission may not directly respond to questions that you ask, but that we have heard your questions and may choose after public comment to ask the applicant or staff to address specific questions. I see we've got at least one person ready to go. Mr. Landry, could we maybe get the site map up on the screen? That one?
Oh.
Oh, you're fine.
Is that the one?
That's the one we were hoping for. Thank you, sir. Go ahead, sir.
Good evening. My name is Scott Warren. I'm a resident in Village Park subdivision to the northwest of the proposed change. We attended a meeting with Faith Heights Church and one of the folks from the zoning department. In that meeting, there was a discussion about developing retail space along Patterson Avenue. Concerns around that as a property owner in a residential neighborhood is that typically with that kind of development close to residential areas, there is study after study that indicates that crime increases. I have concerns about that as a resident. Also, in addition to that, the additional impact of traffic coming off of those facilities and the potential for light manufacturing directly across the street from where I live is not very exciting. So I did want to bring that up as an objection to this changing in zone. A number of the people in our subdivision have talked about this, and we are in compliance with the idea of trying to keep this area residential. And those are my comments.
Thank you, sir. Looks like we've got at least one more commenter lined up.
I'm Gordon McFerrin. I live at 2813 Mead Court in Village Park subdivision. And I'm on the board of directors for the Village Park ROA. We had a meeting with staff and with the people who are proposing it, and the item of light use never came up, light manufacturing never came up in that meeting. It's also not in any of the documents that you have seen. Okay, light manufacturing could be a lot of different things, have a lot of consequences on a neighborhood. 28 1/4 road is a 2-lane road, 1 lane each way with center medians. You're not going to be able to handle a lot of traffic on that road. That's why the Magic Plan is not using that as a main entrance into the Magic Park zone. Also, the 2020 comprehensive plan had that as mixed use. And yeah, but nobody was notified that it was going to change. So nobody brought it up at the meetings on the master plan. To the part along Patterson Road was brought up at the public meeting, and we recommended only make that the mixed use zone and leave everything else R8, so that you could have like businesses and things, or like residences compared to the other parts in that area.
Thank you for your comments, sir. Do we have anyone else who would like to give public comment on this item this evening? I see none from our audience here. Do we have anyone online? No one online either. All right, well, at this time then, we will close the public comment portion of the hearing. Appreciate everyone's feedback, both here and online. Would the applicant like to provide a response or rebuttal to anything you've heard?
Thank you again. Kim Kirk, Kirkland Consulting and Development in Grand Junction. Excuse me, losing my voice tonight. I just want to say that, to address those comments that the statement for the mixed use purpose is what's in the comprehensive plan. And that is, public information, and that is what's stated in the plan. And just wanted to add to the fact that this neighborhood is definitely a mixed use neighborhood. There is, of course, the residential neighborhood where they live at Village Park. Then you have a lot of different commercial uses, really crossing from the east to the west on Patterson. And so just want to reiterate that we feel like this is really an appropriate and compatible use that we're requesting for this neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Kerr. Do we have any questions for the applicant or for staff?
I have one for staff. What are some light industrial uses, just for clarification purposes? What would be some examples?
Manufacturing, you mean?
Or yes, sorry, not industrial, yes, manufacturing, thank you.
I guess there's lots of examples. There's one might include, like we had a request today for like a shop that sells backpacks but makes them in the back. And so they would produce them on site and sell them in the front. That would be a light manufacturing example.
Okay, thank you.
Do you recall where the recently approved Patterson Access Control Plan would have directed access to the Matchett Park? Does that come off of Patterson, or does that come off of 28 1/4 Road? Do we know?
Dave Thornton, Community Development Department. In regards to the access control or access management plan, the main access comes off of 28 1/4 Road, as well as a secondary access that would be coming off of further to the east between 28 1/4 and 28 3/4 along the frontage there of the Matchett Park property. So there is a provision to allow for a driveway into the park there as well. But with the light being at 28 1/4 Road, it's going to act as a fairly primary location for people to access the park.
Well, I'm glad you confirmed. That's what I had recalled as well. So as far as the traffic concerns in that intersection go, we've learned a lot from a very successful project in Canyon View Park on 24 Road, and understand a lot about the uses and the intensities. So any development around this intersection, knowing that that plan has already been established and helps us guide site plan approvals and whatnot, will help contribute to making that intersection appropriately designed for not only whatever uses may come in here, but already it's going to be very, more than likely it'll have significant improvements to address the Matchett Park and the beautiful amenity that you'll have in your close proximity there as well. So, thank you.
Commissioner.
In response to Commissioner Hayes' question, I don't go anywhere without my land use table. Some items listed as an allowed use or mixed use under the form of industrial include the manufacturing of food products, manufacturing and processing, indoor operations and storage. As I go through this use table, all of the industrial related uses are all indoor uses and appear to have a little more stringent regulation on their outdoor or yard types of operations, which I I'm not sure if that provides some solace for some of the folks living nearby, but they do appear to be, from what I'm seeing, wholly inside uses with a potential outdoor like loading dock to load something up or drop something off.
Thank you, Commissioner. Do we have any other questions for the applicant or staff? I do have a question. This may be for the applicant. Is there a long-term intention with respect to residential development on the site? Thank you. Yes, for our record, the answer was it's an option, but there are no plans at the moment to do it, right? Residential development. Okay, thank you. All right, well, if we have no other questions for staff, then I suppose we'll close our public hearing and turn to the commission for additional discussion, deliberation, and or a motion. Who'd like to kick us off?
I'll make a few comments, especially in light of Mr. Heinrich's letter. It appears he wasn't able to be here today, but on behalf, it appears as though it's on behalf of one of the owners associations there nearby. And it's very, very thorough. The large takeaway that I received from it is that it was this is not compatible with the surrounding residential units. And to that, I tend to agree with staff's report and in my own experience with planning principles and whatnot. Respectfully, I would suggest that this kind of thing is wonderfully compatible. And I would start with that by saying compatibility does not mean the same. It can be very, very different and yet facilitate the surrounding area. Again, with what we know from our experience with Canyon View Park and what the city has planned for Matchett Park, providing these sorts of amenities that are allowed within mixed use, that includes more residential as well, I think can be very valuable for the entire community. It will be changed. It will be more than what's there, or I shouldn't say it will be, but it certainly can be with this designation. And I think it's very fitting for a lot of the concepts that were discussed in the Grand Junction 1 comprehensive plan, and could be a very good fit. Furthermore, I'm in favor of the entire parcel being mixed use, because again, the intention of the comprehensive plan is not to look at things right down to the nitty gritty of each parcel. And if we can accomplish more of the mixed use in this neighborhood center where a lot of amenities and signalized intersections and safety elements are all exist, it may provide additional opportunity for the park to be just that in terms of a park along their Patterson frontage, where otherwise the comprehensive plan indicates that as being mixed use as well, even though it's currently owned by the city and future planned for the larger park. So I see a lot of zooming out and looking at the region here and seeing a lot of benefits for this project. So I just wanted to sort of speak to Mr. Heinrich's comments there.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner.
Thank you, Chair. I agree with Commissioner Ehlers. I'm in support of the mixed use. I think it's a good plan. I think this property is kind of an infill in the city. We need to consider density. We need to consider all aspects of the city and keep the sprawl from going to the periphery. In response, and I want to thank your individuals that have come and spoke and given us public testimony. Appreciate your involvement with the city. Just one comment on Mr. Heinrich's letter. He said that you asked to withdraw your recommendation to approve. We as a commission can't withdraw. We have to go according to land use code, see if the criteria fit, and then make a decision on this appropriate zoning change. That then goes to city council, who makes a final decision. So that's the process. And other than that, I think I'm done.
Thank you, Commissioner. Do we have any other comments or discussion? Well, my 2 cents are that I agree with the foregoing comments of my fellow commissioners about the compliance of this application with the criteria for rezoning. I particularly find it persuasive for what it's worth that mixed use isn't implementing a zone designation for both of the future land use map categories of residential high and mixed use, which occupy the sort of 2 features of this property. As the applicant indicated earlier, high density residential development is still an allowed use within the mixed use zoning designation. And so along with the comments that have already been made, I think that also makes this an appropriate request that meets the criteria of our code for approval under the circumstances. With that, do we have a motion?
Chairman,
Commissioner?
I'd like to go ahead and make a motion here as soon as I can pull it up. On the Faith Heights rezone request from an R8 residential 8 zone district to an MU mixed use zone district for 1 parcel totaling approximately 13.92 acres located at 628 and a quarter road, city file number RZN 2021-427. I move that the Planning Commission forward a recommendation of approval to City Council with the findings of fact as listed in the staff report.
Thank you, Commissioner. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. All right, that matter will also pass 7-0. All right, that concludes our Planning Commission agenda this evening. Is there any other business we need to attend to? Perhaps Mr. Landry will tell us if there's something else we need to do this evening. I think you were saying no.
No, sir. Nothing else on the agenda.
All right, thank you. Well, if we have no other business, we have a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned. Thank you all.